this is not a single bit of anti-military bias. She does think, and I agree with her, that the don't ask, don't tell policy is a very bad policy.
The selling of the nominee begins.
That very bad policy, still the policy of the Obama administration. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to the ABC News Washington Post Top Line. I'm David Chalian.
And I'm Rick Klein.
Each weekday we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And to know even more, it's on Twitter, twitter.com/thenote. Let us know what you think.
Even though you're Twitterless at the moment.
I am Twitterless at the moment.
Get us started.
Don't tell.
What's your top line?
Full press. The digging has begun into Elena Kagan's record, and the selling is out in earnest. We saw Joe Biden on Good Morning America and the other shows this morning talking up the merits of Elena Kagan for the Supreme Court. And an interesting piece that comes out yesterday, and there may be more documents to come on this, we find out from the documents at the Clinton Library that Elena Kagan wanted President Clinton to back a strict abortion ban, part of a political compromise, a window maybe into her thinking. We haven't seen her weigh in a lot of the hot-button issues. It'll be interesting to see how the left reacts to this.
Right, that's the late-term partial birth abortion. Of course, advice not taken by President Clinton. Beau hospitalized. Yes, some concerning news coming out of Delaware. Beau Biden, the 41-year-old attorney general there and son of Vice President Joe Biden, is said to be alert and awake, conversing with his family, but seems to have been rushed to the hospital this morning with stroke-like symptoms, perhaps. As you know, his father was 45 years old, experienced a brain tumor and aneurysm issues with his health. The entire family is with Beau at the hospital right now. And again, they say he's awake and alert, but we don't have much more information right now from the vice president's office.
And there's a family history there, of course, and our thoughts and prayers with Beau Biden. It's very sad, and we wish him a full recovery, of course. Country roads. It is our favorite kind of day because it's a voting day, and there's voting going on in West Virginia today, where the big action is a Democratic primary. It's Congressman Alan Mollahan, who's facing a pretty aggressive primary challenge, mostly on the anti-Washington versus Washington ties. This is one of those races that Democrats really need to hold on to, and they're hoping that Alan Mollahan, a veteran in that district, is able to keep that seat because he really offers the best opportunity to keep this in Democratic hands.
Right. And the Democratic primary opponent, who may eke out a victory later today, has really been running against Pelosi and Washington. Not quite the kind of Democratic messaging that the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee would like to see from their nominee. And finally, Snarlin' Arlen. Yes, Arlen Specter up in Pennsylvania in the battle of his life for the next week goes up with his TV ad, one of his closing arguments ad with, of course, President Obama prominently featured. This is from a couple months ago. Obama went up there, did a fundraiser and a rally, and they're using that sound. They had it on the radio. They're now going up on TV with it. Joe Biden was asked this morning, on one of those morning interviews, if the president will be there to campaign, and he could not commit to anything about the president's schedule, although he said he is scheduled to do some more campaigning. Perhaps.
Well, you know, last time around, a late presidential visit put him over the top in a primary. So there's a history there, if nothing else. Of course, a different president, different party, different primary altogether. This is going to be an interesting race to watch over the last week.
No doubt about that. We begin with the Kagan nomination. We are joined by one of the top Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, Senator Orrin Hatch, who just hustled over from the Senate floor after a vote. We thank you very much for doing so, sir. Senator Hatch, I want to begin actually with some of your own words from a year ago when Kagan was mentioned as a possible pick for the last vacancy on the court. You said she's a brilliant lawyer, and if Obama picks her, it is a real dilemma for people. What did you mean by that? And now that she actually is picked, is this Kagan nomination a real dilemma for you?
Well, it's always a dilemma until you have the hearings and you determine just whether you should go forward. Remember, she's nominated for one of 9 positions on the Supreme Court, and it's a lifetime position. So that's different from the Solicitor General's pick. That's an important position, but that's one the president ought to be able to have. On the Supreme Court, it's another matter, and a lot depends on her judicial philosophy, whether she actually will uphold the Constitution and the laws duly passed, and will abide by the law and not substitute her own personal feelings for what the law really is.
You said yesterday also that you think she'd probably make a good justice. Of course, you haven't made up your mind on this yet. Right. But is it fair to say, in your mind at least, that this is not a nomination that would represent extraordinary circumstances, the threshold for a filibuster?
Well, you really don't know, because we really don't know an awful lot about Elena Kagan. But I know her. I have been up at Harvard where I lectured. She came to the lecture. We chatted up there. And of course, we went through the process with regard to both the Clinton administration and also the current Solicitor Generalship. And she's a very intelligent, interesting person, and I suspect she'll do just fine. But we're going to have to really scrutinize it because this is a really important position.
No doubt, as you said, only one of 9. But when you say that she'd make a good justice, or you suspect that she'll probably get through here, what is it about her qualifications that gives you that sense that this is not a sort of pull out all the stops, this is going nowhere kind of a nomination?
Well, she has a lot of qualifications. There's no question about that. But we really know very little about her judicial philosophy, and that's really the most important thing of all. People who go to the Supreme Court need to be people who will be impartial and fair, and that has to be explored. And of course, we're going to have to look at her writings, her speeches, her work in the Clinton administration, and a raft of other things. There's very little to look at right now, but I think as we get into it, we'll find various questions that really will have to be asked, because this is an important position. As much as she may look good initially, and I suspect she will be okay, we've got to look at her judicial philosophy and make sure that she's the type of person that should go on the Supreme Court. Some said, well, she's not a sitting judge. Well, I don't think that's a disqualification. Some of the greatest justices in history never sat in a courtrum.
Senator, a number of your colleagues have raised concern about her actions at Harvard Law School in enforcing a ban and reinstating a ban on military recruiters using the Office of Career Services. Is that of concern to you? Does that say anything to you about her views on the law, something that would be relevant for a Supreme Court justice?
Well, I don't agree with her on that. That's one thing that raises a lot of alarms in my mind. Just, is she going to be fair? You know, the Supreme Court unanimously disagreed with her on some of those issues, and that's something that has to be explored. These are people who are willing to sacrifice their lives for us. They ought to be treated with respect, in spite of the fact that she disagreed with the don't ask, don't tell policy. There's a real question about that. They should have the right to recruit on the Harvard campus, and I was disappointed in that, and I have to say that's something that bothers me quite a bit.
Senator, while we have you, I want to turn your attention to some politics at home in Utah. We saw this weekend your colleague and friend, Bob Bennett, ousted by your own Republican Party there in Utah, going to be denied the chance to run for a 4th term. And I want to know what signal that sent to you about your future in Utah Republican politics. Was this a wake-up call for you in some way?
No, because I always have to go through that. I've been through it the last 2 times. No, I'm a tough guy. And I think when people look at my record, they realize it's conservative and solid.
What happened, do you think?
Well, it's hard people are angry. I've held 3 town hall meetings over the last 6 weeks, and usually if you get 50 people out, that's really a good meeting. These were 500 to 700 people at each one, and I stood there for 3 hours each time and answered questions. Now, there were some of those people, they didn't care what I said. They were against me. They're against everybody. They don't like any incumbents. They think they ought to be thrown out of office. But the most of them are just plain angry. A lot of these Tea Party people are angry, and I'm angry too. We're talking about an administration that's going to take us into $20 trillion, $300 billion deficit by the year 2020, and there'll still be a $1.3 trillion national debt at the time, $900 billion of which will be interest against the debt. I mean, my gosh, they're mad. They have a right to be mad, and I think these Tea Party people are doing the country a service. But when they don't have an open mind and they won't listen, that's another matter, and that's something that I think anybody would find fault with.
Senator Hatch, very briefly, Senator Specter, your colleague there in Pennsylvania, looking to have President Obama come in. What does your tea leaf reading say about that? Do you think he's going to pull it off in the primary and win this fall?
Well, I hope he does. Orrin and I are very good friends. I was disappointed that he left the Republican Party, but he certainly had a right to do that. I can't get involved in that race because I haven't followed it that closely, but there are 2 tough candidates there, and I might add we have a tremendous Republican candidate in that race, and Pat Toomey has a lot of experience, ran the Club for Growth. He's a pretty doggone important candidate. So But I wish Arlen well as a friend, but naturally it'd be wonderful if we could keep that seat Republican.
Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican of Utah, thank you very much, sir, for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Nice to be with you.
Hustling from votes. We love it. We love it.